In this class session, we're taking a look at the ministry practitioner or facilitator, the person or the people that are involved in trying to bring about or facilitate change and transformation in the life of a community. And so specifically in the next few minutes, we're going to take a look at spirituality and the ministry practitioner. Now this is an important topic because the person at the center is so vital in the transformation process. Because as Myers says, ultimately the effectiveness of transformational development comes down not to theory, principles, or tools, but to people. Transformation is about transforming relationships, and relationships are transformed by people. And this is especially true and vital, taking into account the understanding of poverty that we've looked at, in that relational understanding of poverty, in that if it's relationships that are broken, then it's relationships that need to be transformed or restored. And so the change agent, or the agent of reconciliation for these relationships, whether relationships between myself, relationships between myself and the Lord, myself and my neighbors, the community in which I find myself living, is the ministry practitioner. And so that person is so vital. And so we're going to take a look at the importance of that. But as we do that, let's take a quick step back, and assuming that it's not the person that's going to bring about reconciliation, but it's the gospel of Jesus that's going to bring about reconciliation in someone's lives. So let's ask ourselves, well, what is the gospel? How would you define the gospel? What is it exactly that we're presenting and trying to share with people around us? Now, the gospel of Jesus and his kingdom, according to Myers, is a message of life, deed, word, and sign, an inseparable whole, all expressions of a single gospel message. So often, especially in our evangelical context within the West, the gospel is spoken word. It's verbal proclamation of who Jesus is, but it's so much more than that. The gospel goes beyond just verbally speaking. It goes beyond showing acts of love. It goes beyond to looking for justice in the world and in the lives of folks that we work with. In fact, let's take a little bit of a look at what Jesus called his disciples to. So in Mark 3:13 to 19 says this, and this is early on in Jesus' ministry. He has just called the disciples, and Jesus then went up on a mountainside and called to him those he wanted, and they came to him. He appointed 12, designating them apostles, that they might be with him, and that he might send them out to preach and to have authority to drive out demons. These are the 12 he appointed, and it goes on to say the names of the 12 that he called up there to be with him. But there's a few things to point out in this passage that are so key to our lives as ministry practitioners. The first is that the apostles are called, first of all, the first thing they're called to do is to be with Jesus. And from that being with Jesus, then they are to preach or verbally proclaim the gospel message. And from there they have authority to cast out demons. Now some translations add in there to heal the sick as well. So as an attempt to understand the gospel and its completeness and its holistic nature, Myers presents us with the pyramid. And so he gives us this idea that at the top of the pyramid is life, or being with Christ, or my personal spirituality. Then on another corner of the pyramid is word, or verbally proclaiming the gospel. It's teaching, it's preaching. And then another corner is deed, or good works. It's physically caring. It's giving that cup of cold water in Jesus' name. And then a corner that sometimes we don't quite understand as well as we should with the modernistic worldview is the corner of sign, or miracles and spiritual warfare. Often the question asked in this realm is, whose God is more powerful? And so what happens if you cut off one corner of the pyramid? Well, you no longer have a pyramid. And so it's argued that if you cut off one aspect of the gospel, you really don't have the whole gospel then anymore. You're preaching a truncated gospel. So another way that I like to look at it and like to think of it is thinking of it as with the idea of the gospel being a stool. So you've got, in a stool, you have all the legs work together to hold up the seat, right? So and if one leg is missing, you don't have much of a stool because you're just going to fall down. Or maybe you can balance for a time, but pretty soon you're going to shift your weight and that stool is going to collapse to the ground. And so we look at the legs of the key front leg there is the being. And then another leg would be of deed. And then you have word. And then you have sign, all holding up the seat, which would be the gospel of Jesus Christ. So let's think a little bit about this key topic and what we want to focus on for the moment. And the crux of the matter, what needs to come first, is this concept of the gospel as being. Now, is it possible to do ministry without Jesus? As I was diving into ministry coming out of college, I had a pastor tell me, Jeff, don't do ministry without Jesus. I thought, how in the world could that be possible? But then I've gone on and I've times and seasons in my life I've done it. I've watched other people do it along the way. It's easy to get so wrapped up in what we're doing that we neglect and we negate to pour into that personal, vibrant relationship with Jesus that we need. And we go about doing things for Jesus without him. And being, or who we are, must come before what we do. Who we are must be a vibrant follower, lover of Jesus before we're a ministry practitioner. That what we do needs to come out of who we are. And if you, after this lecture, take a minute and flip to Philippians 3, verses 1 through 11, and look at Paul there. In that passage, Paul says nothing compares to knowing Jesus. Now, he goes through in his resume and he lists that he was the Jew of Jews. He has all the requirements. He graduated from the Ivy League school, summa cum laude, and he has it all. He has a resume of all resumes. And he says all that is rubbish, all that is garbage compared to knowing Jesus. Now, it's a little bit like we can have all the ministry tools, all the practice that we need, and all the education and training, but if we don't know Jesus, are we really going to be able to take advantage of that? Now, hopefully you've done the reading out of the New Friars book. It's just a short story that Scott Besnicker tells there. But the question is, who do you love? Do we love the mission or what we're about more than we love the person that gave us that mission? Now, if we're going to be vibrant ministry practitioners, if we're going to have sustainability ourselves, our own personal spiritual sustainability must be high. And we must be more in love with the mission giver than we are with the mission. And so it's key. The gospel is huge, and it's all about being with Jesus, making sure that we're spending that time to be with him. Now, I have 3 small children, and I love them dearly, and they love doing art projects and artwork. And they bring me a picture, and it's so beautiful, and I put it on the refrigerator. But to be honest, between you and I, it's really just junk or garbage. It really isn't worth a whole lot, but it's worth something to me because it came from my children. However, what I love way more than that work of art that they've handed me is when they crawl up on my lap and they tell me about their day. They spend time with me. We spend time sharing and interacting with each other. How many times in my life and how many times in your life do we take Jesus, our scribblings on a piece of paper, and say, Jesus, look what I did for you? And how much more would he long for us to crawl up into his lap and to spend time with him? And then we get to know his heart, and his heart for the people in which we're interacting, and his heart for the people that we're serving. We must do ministry with Jesus. But then also the other aspect of this concept of gospel as being is that being with people is huge. John Perkins, who is the founder of the Christian Community Development Association in the States, said this: we cannot discount the importance of our physical presence in deteriorating communities. The longer I have the privilege of working in marginalized neighborhoods, the more I come to believe that it's being present and showing up day after day after day that covers over a multitude of sins. It's being present in the lives of people that really does make a difference. They're not necessarily looking to see if I do things in the best form, although we want to be professional, as we'll talk about in the next lecture, but they're really watching to see if I show up. And what happens when the going gets tough? What happens when there's an incident of violence in the neighborhood? Am I still going to come, or am I going to run? They're really looking to see if I'm going to show up. And at the end of the day, it's all about relationships. Relationships, relationships, relationships are the 3 most important things when it comes to the ministry practitioner and the spirituality. And so, in conclusion, Myers says, the beginning is the realization that we cannot love our neighbor or even ourselves if we do not love God with all our heart, soul, and mind. We've already noted that the disciples were called first to be with Jesus, and only then to preach the gospel, heal the sick, and cast out demons. Being comes before doing. We cannot share what we do not have. We cannot live eloquent lives that provoke questions to which the gospel is the answer unless our lives are made alive by the Spirit of the living God. So as you seek to live out what we're studying in this course, as you seek to make a difference and to be agents of change in the communities in which you live and serve. First, you must take care of your own spiritual vitality. You must make sure that you are spending time being with Jesus. And then out of that being and who you are and who Jesus is molding you to be comes what you can do to serve and make a difference in this world that so desperately needs to know him.